The question we're going to ask today is, can these in-ear monitors sound like these, my favorite headphones? So let's talk about it. Hey, if you're new here, my name is James and I help worship leaders and church sound techs eliminate the mystery and frustration around sound at church. That includes the gear that you buy too. So if you like that kind of thing, go ahead and hit subscribe and mash that little bell too. So if you've ever been shopping for in-ear monitors and you take a look at the fine print on the return policy, not a lot of them are able to be returned. And I get it, I wouldn't want to share your earwax either. So the thing is, we can't test out in-ear monitors and send them back if we don't like them. And honestly, you can't hear exactly what they sound like without actually trying them. So the best approximation we have is some guy on the internet telling you what they sound like and what my thoughts are on them. So is this perfect? Absolutely not. But will we have a good time? Yes, we will. What made me want to make this video is I saw the Technica E50 in-ear monitors say they're supposed to sound a lot like or be voiced like my favorite headphones for mixing and monitoring, the Technica ATH-M50Xs. Well, it's X because it has a little detachable cable and you can switch it with a straight one if you don't like the curly one. But the curly one makes me feel like I'm back in 1992 and talking on the telephone. So, you do you, but I like them. The thing I like about the M50s, aside from their stellar comfort, is they've got a little bit of a bass boost on the bottom end. So even when you're listening quietly, it still feels big. And the reason that's important is because of the Fletcher Munson curve. So if the Fletcher Munson curve sounds super nerdy to you and you're a little bit confused and you want to skip it, feel free, it won't hurt my feelings. There's little chapter markers down here somewhere. So you can skip ahead and I'll be okay. So the Fletcher Munson curve basically says that at different intensities or different volume levels, if we're going to use the normal vernacular, now I'm using more big words. Oh well, here you are. So as it gets louder, we perceive bass frequencies better. And as it gets quieter, we're less perceptive to bass frequencies. And this is fine with me because every gust of wind being like a big rumble to my ears wouldn't be all that enjoyable to spend time in nature. So what that means is that when we turn our headphones or our in-ear monitors down, we perceive less bass. And so things sound thinner. So the certain EQ profile of these headphones makes it so that I can listen lower without it feeling like it's too thin. So I still get the fullness feeling without having to crank it up. The other thing I like about the M50 headphones is that you can crank them and they don't get too harsh. So if you really want to listen loud or want to have that feeling and you're not going to bother people around you with your headphones, you can listen loud and it's fine. So to do this test, I listened to a bunch of music on my playlist that I use for reference tracks. These are tracks that have punchy bass. Some tracks are super bright, so I know if something that I'm listening to isn't that bright, then there's something wrong with the speakers, or they've just tamed off the top end, and so I can know that. And other little things where I'm listening for things that maybe get really in your face and kind of real present, and other songs that feel more scooped in the mids and have more top and bottom end. There's a wide variety of stuff that I listen to kind of test out a new speaker system or headphones or in-ear monitors. So I spend a lot of time doing that. And I also listen to stuff that's really punchy and has a lot of transients, which is going to be more like the type of things you're going to hear when you're mixing in-ear monitors. In-ear monitors, if you turn up the drums, those drums have a lot of transients. And so if your in-ear monitors or headphones distort some with those transients, it's not going to be as pleasing. But if they handle the transients well, then you're going to have a good sounding mix. Most recorded music is very compressed and doesn't have a lot of transients left. You hear the drums, but the drums don't jump out and hit you like they would in a live mix. That's part of what I love about live audio is the impact that you feel. So when we have consumer level gear and we're trying to use it in a pro atmosphere, maybe you've had somebody try to bring their Apple iPod earbuds to mix their in-ear monitors, they're not going to have a very good time because they're not made to reproduce transients quite as much. So that's the long story for saying I listened to a whole bunch of music, but I was thinking about how you'll actually use them in the long run. So after I listened on the headphones for a while, I switched over to the in-ear monitors and listened to a lot of the same tracks. And the thing that I noticed right away when switching back and forth is that you get a lot of tactile response on the low end when you're wearing headphones. There's something about the bass frequencies actually hitting the outer part of your ear that makes you perceive more bass. So maybe they voiced these so that they measured the same way as it's arriving at your eardrum, but you did lose a little bit of perceived bass with the E50s as opposed to the M50s. So E50 in your monitors, M50 headphones. Just you get that straight while we're doing this. When you switched over, it seemed like there was a little bit of a lack of bass.
I find your lack of bass disturbing.
So that was the first thing I noticed. The next thing I tried was listening to a track that I know is very bright. It's, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, so just keep it between us. But if you listen to En Vogue's Never Gonna Get It, which is a terrible song, but it's super, super bright, right? So if you don't have your eyebrows pinned back when you crank that up, there's something wrong with your tweeters or the top end of your speakers. And when I listened to it, it didn't seem that bright. So they are rolling off some of the top end in a pleasing way so that things don't get too bright and harsh with these in-ear monitors. Especially if you have vocals that start getting SE or you get cymbals that get loud all of a sudden, I could appreciate that being a blessing when in in-ear monitors. When in in-ear monitors. Wow, I really need speaking lessons today. So thanks for bearing with me. The third thing that I noticed when I put on the E50s, and this is common with a lot of in-ear monitors, is I could hear all the detail of the reverbs. And it's brilliant. I love detailed reverb. And that's one thing that's awesome about in-ear monitors is there's so little distance between the speaker and your eardrum. Those really low-level signals that are really nice and kind of luscious. I'm getting weird now, so I'll stop. But I really like being able to hear the detail in in-ear monitors, and these had it. So then I tried listening to the E50s at a lower level. And at a lower level, I did lose the bass in the way that I was talking about earlier, right? So the thing that I love about the bass boost of these was not especially present in these at lower levels. Again, that could be also the tactile perception on my ears, but either way, to get that feeling back, I had to use a little bit of a boost on the low end with a low shelf. I put it at 100 Hertz or something that you would probably find on a monitor mixer and boosted it up about 5 dB. And then at quiet levels, it felt really good. Now, I didn't also like that EQ when I turned it up, right? When I turned it up or at a medium level, there wasn't any low end lost, right? So it's not that they were thin, it's just they weren't really bumped up in the low end the way that you might expect. Now, the benefit of that is that it doesn't feel out of control or muddy or flabby, especially when you turn it up. So when I turned them up, it wasn't like I was getting punched with low end, but it felt pretty tight still. So for bass players, you might add some EQ to your monitor mix in order to enjoy these a lot, especially if you're maybe comparing them to the headphones. So your mileage might vary. You might feel like there's tons of low end and plenty of low end for you. That's just what my thoughts were and what I kind of wanted when I was listening to these. Now, my thoughts on using EQ on the overall monitor mix have changed, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So to throw another contender in the ring, I also got the Audio-Technica E40 in-ear monitors to see if the budget option would compare and how it would fit together. So the 50s, they're about $200 retail price. These are about $100 retail price. So it's a little cheaper. How would they hold up? Would they sound very different? And would I like them? So I tested these out, and these were actually voiced very different than the E50s. So I felt like they had a lot more bottom end boosted already, so that at low levels, felt like I could still hear all the low end, and I liked it. It also felt a little bit brighter, so I'm wondering if they were maybe trying to aim a little bit more toward the prosumer target market, where it would sound good to just listen to music hyped up on the top and bottom end if you're plugging it into your phone, or if they just thought, hey, maybe some people want stuff more hyped up. Either way, I felt like the E40s gave me what I wanted to hear when I was keeping my monitor mix levels lower. So it's kind of a mixed bag. It depends on what you really want to do. So if you like mixing your in-ear monitor mix a little bit louder, I would go with the E50s. They still need a little bit of a bass boost to really crank up, but the top end roll-off made it less harsh, and let's say your band gets out of control or the electric guitar player plays much louder and stomps on a fuzz pedal and it's super bright all of a sudden, these would be a great option for that to kind of round things out and not get harsh when things are louder. So lately I've been recommending that people mix their in-ear monitors a lot quieter. And the reason for this, number one, is it protects your hearing. You're not gonna risk damaging your hearing if your in-ear monitors are down in the 70 to 80 decibel range rather than the 105 decibel range, especially if you're doing rehearsal, you're doing sound check, you're doing 2 services, you're in your in-ear monitors a long time. Those levels being higher for your hearing, it's gonna damage your hearing a lot faster over time compared to if you kept your levels way down. And it takes a little bit of getting used to. It's something new and you've got to kind of make that adjustment, but you can train your brain to listen for the details. And if you can get the tone right, it can sound fantastic. The other thing about starting with your monitor mix really quiet and getting everything well balanced there is then when you turn it up even just a little bit, you get that natural bass boost or perceived bass boost from the Fletcher Munson curve, and now things feel bigger while you're still at a very reasonable quiet level. So I recommend mixing much quieter, and if you like that or if you want to try that, the E40s right here, they're going to be a great in-ear monitor to use at those lower levels. I mentioned earlier the master EQ on your personal monitor mixer, if you've got the P16s or the ME1s or whatever else personal monitor mixer you have, or if you've got an aux send coming from the console to feed your monitor mix, there's a master EQ on that aux send as well. And I used to think you should always leave it flat. You shouldn't touch it because you don't want to be messing with the tone of how you're playing and perceiving your instrument. You want to have as accurate a representation of that instrument as possible so that you can send the sound tech the best tone possible. As the sound tech, I appreciate when musicians send the best tone possible. When it's balanced from you, I don't have to do extra work, right? You're just doing it right. But the more that I'm diving into monitor mixing and recommending that people mix quieter, sometimes you need to have that extra little bass boost to make it feel bigger while it's at a lower level. So I used to say, leave it flat, but now I say, if you're pushing it quieter, yeah, bump it up just a little bit so that it sounds full still and it doesn't sound too thin and wimpy. Ain't nobody got time for a wimpy monitor mix. Now, if you're a musician or a worship leader and you want to learn more about sound, but it feels intimidating to jump into a course about it, I built one just for you. It's called Audio for Worship Leaders. It helps you learn the things you need to know to succeed on stage and with your sound team. It teaches how to use your mics the right way and how to mix your monitors in depth with walkthroughs and tutorials, and even showing you stuff on the console so that if the sound tech doesn't show up, you know what to do and you know how to fix problems and use the same language as your sound tech so that you can communicate and be on the same level. Also, I avoided using any technical mumbo jumbo without also defining it in this course. So if you're afraid that it's going to be a little bit over your head, don't worry. I made it really simple for people with a musical background to understand it and really latch on and get it. Registration opens soon, and you can find more information through the link down in the description below. Now, if you're wondering how I got all these in-ear monitors, the good people over at zZounds sent them to me to try out, and Audio-Technica didn't have any say in this video. I'm not even showing this video to them before I publish it. They let me borrow gear and I'm really thankful. If you want to shop there, you can find some affiliate links down in the description below. And anytime you make a purchase, it helps me and my channel. So thank you in advance and thank you to zZounds. I love diving into all this in-ear monitor stuff. So if there's other things you want to see, go ahead and type those down in the comments below. I would love to hear your suggestions for future video ideas. If you like this video, mash thumbs up and be sure to share it with a friend, especially a worship leader friend that might enjoy the Audio for Worship Leaders course. Remember, it's all about the low end, avoid the sound tech solo, and nobody leaves church humming the kick drum. We'll see you back here next time on Attaway Audio.